Good evening. This is Scott Antline, Director of Finance and Operation. I'd like to spend a few minutes to review some of our current year-to-date activity with key revenue drivers, a recap of our prior year 2021 operations, which is currently being audited by the independent public accounting firm of Mayer Dissel, information relative to next year's 22-23 budget, and a report of some welcome donations received by the district. So let's start with some current year updates. You will see on our earned income tax tracker that we are well ahead of budget for 21-22, the first 2 months of August and September. And so far in October, happy to report we are halfway to budget already in the month of October. So as we discussed last month, positive trend in our earned income tax collections for 21-22. And for real estate tax collections, the same. We are showing over 89% collected to date, which runs right in sync with what our prior year was. So it's trending very favorably in 21-22 with our two biggest revenue drivers. Now let's recap last year's operations, which will serve as a backdrop to a few of the action items we will have this evening under Finance. Report 2.1 outlines our general fund balance and a historical look at actual revenues expenditures over the last 10 years. Most were positive operations, except for the 2 years of 15-16 and 16-17 you will see in red in the middle of the page. I'm happy to confirm our discussions that we had throughout the budget process that 2021 did in fact end in the black as well. The district has long maintained a conservative level of annual budgeting to ensure long-term capital needs are addressed by transferring funds from years of positive operations to the district's capital projects reserve fund. For the 2021 operational year, you will see in blue that we will transfer approximately $3.2 million to our capital projects fund. As you will recall from our budget discussions and presentations, this was both anticipated and planned. Planned from the perspective that we budgeted a line item and conservatively for such a transfer to be approximately $2 million, similar to 18-19 and 19-20 for the long-term needs of the district. Anticipated, as we discussed throughout the year, that our local revenues were maintaining strength during the uncertain pandemic period for which we budgeted conservatively lower, and from less expense in certain categories directly impacted by the 4-day versus 5-day operating schedule in 2021 and extended holiday closure after Thanksgiving through the beginning of the school year. Those areas include transportation, utilities, and substitutes where expenditures trended much lower. You will also recall that we received significant federal assistance to ensure we maintained operations. So that said, you will see an action item on this evening's agenda to transfer $3,250,000 to the Capital Projects Fund in conjunction with the annual audit of operations. Our independent auditors, Mayer Dissel, are scheduled to be here next month to report out further details of the district's operations for 2021. We anticipate a clean and strong report. With respect to the Capital Projects Fund and long-term planning, you will recall from our June meeting that with this anticipated operational transfer, we will have our 5-year capital plan fully funded to address the upcoming needs of all of our schools, which we also stated puts us in a solid position to move forward with the most significant capital need, a new high school. I will do a quick summary of our capital spends and balance next month, and of course we will update our high school project financing plans as we progress through that process, for which you have heard and will hear some further updates on tonight. So let's shift to the other item in blue, which will be another action item tonight. You will see a transfer to the food service line item in the amount of $100,000. On Report 2.2, here is a history of the food service fund, which summarizes the revenue and expense relative to our cafeteria operations. It is typical that the food service operation in school districts require support from the general fund in order to keep breakfast and lunch prices in line with the federal National School Lunch Program guidelines. In the far right columns, you will find the annual profit or loss and annual general fund contribution made to support the food service program. Over time, these two columns will generally balance. The amounts vary year to year, depending on current cash deposits and other factors. Although our performance from 2014-15 through 2018-19 was moving into the positive direction, we were upended in March of 2020 when the pandemic first hit home with school closures. Many factors surrounding limitations on meal service and reimbursements, with fixed personnel costs and rising food costs, drove school district cafeterias further into the red. Fortunately, we were able to cover such losses with the positive operations I mentioned in the general fund. In addition, we expect some emergency funding to come through in December of this year, specifically for food service operation. And we may be eligible to utilize additional federal funds coming from the American Recovery Plan ESSER monies. However, important to note again that our trends prior to this period of uncontrollable factors was very positive. So now that I hit on the current year trends and prior year operational trends, next is item 2.3, an important notice relative to next year and the 2022-23 budget year. PD has certified the Act 1 index for 22-23 at 3.4%. As you know, this is the maximum percentage that the school district could raise tax rates without approval via referendum. You will recall from our June meeting that we shared a multi-year look at projections of Quaker Valley's real estate tax rate that would include both operational and high school project costs. Although we estimated the allowable Act 1 index for 22-23 at 3.5%, which now comes in at 3.4%, we projected that 2022-2023 tax increase to be under 3% and still do, well within the regulatory guidelines. As mentioned earlier, we will be certain to include updated high school project financing plans and long-term projections as we begin the 22-23 budget discussions and presentations. So the final informational item is a report of donations received by the district. We are extremely thankful to Susan Commercy for donating of a violin with shoulder rest bow and case to the Quaker Valley High School, and to our partners at QVRA for 2 automated external defibrillators, one at Quaker Valley Middle School turf field and one at the Osborne track. And that sums up my report for October, so I will turn it over to Mr. Floro for any follow-up comments and presentation of our proposed action items.